Welcome back to Learn SKN, and today we have the May-June 2017 CSEC Economics Paper 2. So that's the May-June 2017 CSEC Economics Paper 2. And today we're going to try and do at least 2 questions because, you know, the economics paper is different to the POB paper in that the first few questions are little short questions, little 15 markers, and then they go down to some that, you know, for the huge marks. Right, and then even these first few questions, they basically cover the breadth of the syllabus also. So the first question, define the term opportunity cost, 2 marks. And so we can use a range of definitions. We go into the textbook, and so the textbook has it here. Opportunity cost is defined as the next best alternative. So the next best alternative, that's what we call opportunity cost. But put another way, the opportunity cost is the opportunity cost of an item is what you give up to get that item. So it's what you give up to get that item. And of course, I've done a lecture video on opportunity cost, so you can check that when you get a chance to try to understand further what opportunity cost is. So opportunity cost, whatever must be given up to obtain some item. So whatever you give up to get an item. So if you give up, let's say, going to the movies, instead, if you give up going to the restaurant or the movies, so you have 2 choices. So you go to the restaurant, that means you give up the movies. You go to the movies, you give up the restaurant. And so the opportunity cost is whatever must be given up to obtain that item, or as the textbook has it, the opportunity cost is defined as the next best alternative foregone. So the next best alternative that you gave up. So that's opportunity cost, 2 easy marks just like that. Then we have list 3 groups that makes choices in the economy. And so this one is very easy again. This one would be, of course, the household, the firm, and the government. So those are the 3 players in the economy. The household, the firm, and the government. Those are the 3 players within an economy. And as you can see here in the textbook, the 3 main groups in the economy are the household, the firm, and the government. So household, the firm, and the government. Those are the 3 main groups within an economy. So you list those 3 and you get that 3 easy marks. So far, so good. Those are the easy ones right out the gate. They have to give you something nice and easy. Then C, with the aid of a diagram, explain how a production possibility frontier shows increasing opportunity costs. So the production possibility frontier, it actually displays opportunity costs. Now we have to show how it depicts increasing opportunity costs. And so we're going to use our textbook and try to explain with the aid of a diagram how a production possibility frontier shows increasing opportunity costs. So that's the opportunity cost going up. And so you can show both increasing and decreasing based on the angle you take it from. So of course, we know that this is a production possibility frontier, PPF, or PPC, production possibility curve. And so this just depicts an economy that, for simplification, all it's saying is that this economy, the assumption is the economy produces just 2 goods. And so to produce the 2 goods, they have to give up one to get more of the other one. And so that is how it depicts opportunity cost, because you have point A, point B. Now to jump from point A to point B, so you have watermelons on this side, wafers on this side, right? So right now you're producing watermelon at I and wafers at G. Now, in order to produce at B, you have to give up some of your watermelons at J, and then you have to obtain the wafers at H. So you're giving up, you can see the opportunity cost come into play. You're giving up some of your watermelons in order to produce more of your wafers. Another way to look at it is with some numbers right here. So you see this is another example of a production possibility frontier where they have some numbers plugged in. You have point F, A, B, E. Now at point F, you're basically producing most of the computers. In this case, it's computers versus cars. In this economy, it's computers and cars, CNC, computers and cars. So at F, you're producing a lot more computers than you are cars. Now, if you want to move from F to A now, you are going to give up. You are going to give up a whole ton of computers, right? And in order to gain a whole lot more of your cars. So you're going to give up a lot of computers to get more 600 units of cars. Beforehand, at F, you were not producing even close to 600 units of cars. Let's look at A and B also. At point A, you're producing 2,200 units of computer for 600 units of cars. Now, if you want to increase your output of cars, you have to give up some of your computers. And so to move from A to B, you have to give up 200, because I moved from 2,200 to just 2,000. You have to give up 200 of your computers to obtain 700 or 100 more of the car parts. And so you can see how opportunity cost is increasing. The more you go down here, the more of the computers you are giving up. So as you move down and down and down, you're giving up more and more computers to obtain more and more cars. And the reverse is true. If you move from here going up, you're giving up more and more and more of the cars to obtain more computers. So that is how it depicts the increasing, showing the increasing opportunity cost. So that's C. So D now. D. An individual's disposable income has increased. The choice for the individual arises from the equation y equals c plus s. Explain these choices. All right, and so just 4 easy maths. Now what they're talking about here, now economics. Now your income, you do two things with the income. Only two things you can do with your income. Is either you consume your income, which is C, or you save it, which is S. And Y denotes your income. So your disposable income is Y, and Y, your disposable income, is equal to your consumption, what you spend on consumption, plus what you put aside for savings. So you have C plus S, and all of them together formulates your income, right? And so explain these choices. So again, once you have disposable income, it's divided between either consuming or saving. Your income is either saved or consumed. And so they say an individual's disposable income has increased. And so what you have to choose now to do is either you increase your consumption or you increase your savings. Or you can increase both if you want to. You can consume a bit more while you save a bit more based on what your income has increased to. So let's explain these choices. So your choice is your Y, which is your income, C is your consumption, and S is your savings. And so you have what you call your marginal propensity to save or your marginal propensity to consume. And this can change based on your income. Sometimes as your income increase, your marginal propensity to consume increases. That's normally the case. Normally when the income increase, your demand, the law of demand states that as your income rise, you tend to, buy more things. And so you can see that if your income rises, then your consumption might, in all cases, your consumption will go up, right? Your saving might remain the same, but your consumption will go up. So these are the choices you have to make as an individual, whether to consume your income or save your income, right? So I'm assuming this one to differentiate between C and S and explain what they are. So C would be your consumption, and so your consumption levels might increase with your disposable income increasing, and then the savings can either stay the same. Maybe your savings can increase also. It depends on the level at which your income has increased. And so that's basically 4 marks for that very simple answer right there. All right. So that's it for question 1. Let's move on to question 2. And so the difference gonna come out basically in the definitions of each. So you just define both economies of scale and diseconomies of scale, and you're going to see the difference right there. So what is economies of scale? Economies of scale are those advantages that accrue to a firm as the firm increases in size. So simply put, economies of scale are all those advantages that a firm gets as its output or its size, its production level increases. You can also say economies of scale is where the cost of production goes down as the output of the firm increases. So as the scale of production increases, the overall production cost or the average cost of production goes down. That's economies of scale. So as you produce more, as the firm grows, as it expands, your average total cost goes down. That's economies of scale. And of course, this economies of scale would be the opposite, where as the firm's output goes up, as the firm increases production, the average total cost tends to rise with the output. That should not be, but it tends to rise, and so you have this economies of scale. So as a firm grows, this economies of scale set in. These economies of scale are disadvantages that result from an ongoing growth of the organization. These disadvantages result in increase in the average cost of production. And so that's the opposite right there. These economies of scale, as the firm grows, as it expands, as production increases, there are certain disadvantages that result from the growth. And these disadvantages normally come in the form of increased average cost of production. The average cost of production go up. So economies of scale is where your average cost of production goes down as you expand, as you grow, whereas this economies of scale is where your average cost of production goes up as you grow, as you expand, as the scale increases. And so that's how we distinguish between those two. And so that's 4 marks right there. One example of this economies of scale, right? One example of this economies of scale. And so we have some examples right here. You have a loss of managerial control. What they're saying here is that as the firm grows, as it expands, then the management is not as efficient as it should be, because now all of a sudden your manager is not accustomed to supervising so many persons. So all of a sudden things are slipping through the cracks. Persons are stealing. People are being inefficient. People taking time off because you can't even see them. So all of a sudden you have a loss. Your average total cost going up because people are wasting. Inefficiencies happening because you lost managerial control as the firm grows. Then you have poor industrial relations, meaning that your workers no longer, because you might be kind of out of touch, the firm might be a little bigger, so all of a sudden the boss and the subordinates aren't really seen eye to eye, and as such, you have poor relationships between you and your subordinates, and so they might do things to sabotage the work. They might not be as motivated as before, and so they become less productive, less efficient. Poor quality of work might be done, things like that because of the growth. And then you have over specialization. As workers become more and more specialized, this might lead to boredom and reduced quality of work. In recent times, modern management strategy includes allowing workers to see a product through from entire production line. This has found to increase output efficiency and quality of the productions of the product. So what they're saying is that as the firm grows, and the same thing, worker doing the same thing, because before, if it wasn't as big, then one person might have done 2-3 tasks. But as it grows, you can now have departments specializing in certain areas, and now persons become bored, and so they're lethargic, and so the quality of work suffer, the products suffer. That might cost you money down the road because persons might sue you, things like that. So all these are examples of how these economies of scale can come into play. Also, disadvantage again, because you grow, you might want a new supply link, a new supply chain, and so you might have to venture elsewhere to get your raw materials, and that might end up costing you more because you grew so big. Now you're out of your supply, the local market cannot supply you, you have to go elsewhere, and so that increases your overall cost of production. So those are some disadvantages of these economies of scale. Then we're moving on to C. This one is a 6 marker. Discuss one advantage and one disadvantage of division of labor, and we just discussed one of it, right? One disadvantage. So one advantage, of course, is persons become more expert at their job, at their specified job. They become more expert at it. They become more efficient because they know this process, like the back of they know this process like their hand. Right? They are so familiar with this process that they become more efficient. They find ways to cut down time, to become more productive, things like that. So that's one advantage of division of labor. Become an expert, more efficient, and as such, you can reduce time, increase productivity, increase the overall output, reduce the cost of production. That's one good part of the division of labor. But then the flip side is also true. Because you're doing the same task over and over and over again, then, persons might get bored, because division of labor can lead to specialization. And so let's turn to the textbook just for a glance to see the outline of the division of labor and the advantages and disadvantages, so you can see a more concrete proof as we're discussing it, right? So here we go. They want one, but I'm going to give you more than one. So division of labor, as we said before, the workers become more skilled at their job, because we said that. So here, workers perform the same task over and over. There is a saving of time, become more efficient. As workers perform the same task repeatedly, their skill improve. There is an increase in output because of all of these factors we just mentioned. Division of labor makes the use of machinery possible. It is easier to invent a machine to perform one or two tasks than to perform a series of tasks. So that's the next advantage right there. Division of labor makes mechanization easier, because as you can see, look at the assembly line for vehicles. Now robots are the ones who can do a lot of the assembling of the cars, because they have a robot to put on doors, a robot to put on tires, a robot to put on various different tasks that come together to form the overall makeup of the car. And so you can see it like that. As the workers have simple tasks to perform, he suffers from less fatigue. That's the next advantage right there. The worker might have the chance to choose the task for which he has a greatest ability. So all those advantages of division of labor, but some of the ones that will give you more traction will be to discuss all of these as one. Then disadvantages, as we started mentioning, there is monotony of the work. As each worker performs a small part of the operation, he has to repeat the same task all day. This leads to boredom and indifference, and therefore it's going to reduce productivity in a sense. And the worker might, if you're bored and you're indifferent, you might not care, something might slip through, and so you have problems there. The workman ceases to be craftsman, that is, a skilled creator of a product. He is just a part of the production process. He could be described as a wage slave, someone employed in a mindless job for his livelihood. And of course, that does not sound good at all. Division of labor makes the worker a specialist in a small task. The more specialized a worker, the more difficult it is for him to find a job if the firm closes down. And that's one thing that you have to note, because the worker has been doing the same thing over and over for years. If the job closed down, he now has to go and re-up his skills. You have to get more skills in other areas. And to piggyback onto this, now what we're talking about here is if you're in a company and you're doing one specific task, then you would not have an overall view of the workings of the company. That means that the manager cannot take you from one spot in the company, put you somewhere, and you're going to fit in well. You might not even know what's going on. You might be lost. Because if you're accustomed to one area, doing the same task over and over, then you're not versed in the other areas of the business. That is why some bosses would take their workers and put them at different areas in the business from time to time. So if you're working in a bank, they might put you in loans, they might put you at front desk, they might put you in accounts, things like that, because you want to give you an overall scope of the company. And so you have the advantages and disadvantages of division of labor, and they are outlined right there nicely in your textbook. And so you just choose one, the one with the most meat, right? You choose one for advantage, one for disadvantage with the most meat, so you can get 6 marks from each of them, and you're good to go. All right? The last question that we're going to do today in this video, explain why over time industries tend to become more capital intensive. Why industries become more capital intensive over time? Okay, so that falls in the same thing with division of labor and specialization. As the industry matures, they find ways to replace labor with capital. So the example I gave you with the car factory, back in the day when Ford first, when the first car came off the assembly line, that was a hand done with all hands. But as the industry matured over time, they learned ways to mechanize different parts of the process, and then those robots and machines cost money, and so you're going to replace the labor with the capital, and that's why it becomes more capital intensive, because over time in certain industries the capital can be substituted for labor. So remember, there are 4 factors of production: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship or enterprise. In some industries, as time goes on, you are now able to replace labor with capital. And you can see this in some other industries, like for example, you have certain farming implements. Back in the day, you needed a whole gang to harvest certain crops. Now, one harvester go through and clean up the place. And but the harvester costs money, and so it's more capital intensive. It costs money. These equipment costs money. So that's the overall gist of this question. Now, what you do, you give an example. You give examples for this one. You have to show examples of how over time the labor can be replaced by the capital, and the capital costs more money, and so that is why it becomes more capital intensive over time. Okay, and so that's it for the first 2 questions on the May-June 2017 CSEC Economics Paper 2. Those are the first 2 questions. And so what you have to do now is, of course, like the video, subscribe to the channel so you know, and hit the bell so you know when Learn SKN drops the rest of the May-June 2017 CSEC Economics Paper 2. Alright? Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.